Going to start now the second discussion panel of the day, the Spanish economic outlook. I would like now to introduce the participants and the moderator of this panel. Alberto Nadal, Deputy Secretary for Economic Affairs of the Partido Popular. Ana Aguilar, Chief Economist of Deloitte, Spain. Isabelle Mateos y Lago, Chief Economist of BNP Paribas. Antonio Romero, Managing Director for CECA. This panel is moderated by Jordi Fábrega. Please go ahead. Editor for the economy section of Radio Cadena SER. Vamos a hacer una foto de familia, por favor.
So let's start this second roundtable about the Spanish economic outlook. As you know, in recent years, Spain has ranked among Europe's best performing economies and is also considered one of the most advanced globally. With solid GDP growth, strong employment indicators, its stocks last year ranked among the top performers. Overall, the outlook for 2026 suggests a similar trend. However, despite these positive indicators, Spain still faces significant challenges such as low productivity, longevity, high levels of public debt, a political gridlock that has left the country without an approved annual budget for 3 consecutive years. We will discuss about it, and we will also examine a little bit the impact of geopolitical and international tensions and uncertainty on Spain's economic outlook. We will do it with these 4 excellent panelists. Let's begin this roundtable setting the scene of a Spanish economic outlook. All institutions suggest that Spain will grow faster than the average European countries. From Partido Popular perspectives, Alberto, which is your diagnosis of the economic situation and economic outlook for Spain?
So, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation to this panel and to the Spain's Investors Day. Well, I think we have to look at things in an objective way. So Spain is growing more than most European countries, most countries in the Eurozone, and we are also creating employment. But if we look deeper in what's behind this, is first of all, if you look at the countries in the Eurozone that are growing faster, these are the countries that during the Euro crisis made reforms. Spain, Portugal, Greece, Ireland, and in some way also Italy. So that means that part of the growth that we are having now, a good part of it, is because we made the right things, not now, in the last conservative government. The second thing is that part of this growth is not very healthy. Spain is the country in Europe where population is growing faster than anywhere else. Immigration is not under control, and if we have a net increase of 500,000 people every year coming to this country, they will create GDP. But it's not the best one. And the proof of that is that productivity is not growing. And the second reason why this growth is not as healthy as it should be is, you mentioned it, the fiscal situation. If we compare Spain with those same countries that are growing fast in the Eurozone, the others are reducing quite fast the public debt GDP ratio. If we compare our public debt GDP ratio now with the one we had before the pandemic, we are in the same level. So we are creating a vulnerability in the Spanish economy, not making our homework, not doing our homework to reduce public deficit faster and to reduce public debt faster. And the proof that this growth should be healthier is that if you look at the figures of foreign investment or the figures of gross capital formation in the country are not impressive. In fact, we lost part of our investment during the pandemic, and we have not recovered it fully. So our business community and investors abroad are looking at Spain as an opportunity, but they are not fully convinced that the growth that we are having now is sustainable in the future. To make it sustainable, we have to change the economic policy. That's something that maybe we can talk about it later when you will ask about the challenges and the policy. But the truth is that nothing that is being done now is helping for a sustainable growth for the future. What is happening is that we are living from what we did in the past, and we are increasing this growth artificially with public debt and immigration. So the perspectives in the short run are relatively good, but the distance in growth between Spain and the euro area is decreasing over time. Europe will start to recover, and we will continue to fading out a little bit the growth that we have seen in the past. So the economic convergence will reduce in the next year unless we do what we have to do, that is to completely change the economic policy.
We will talk about some of these topics later, but first of all, let me ask the other panelists about their assessment of the Spanish economic situation and perspective. Ana?
Okay. So good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be part of this 16th edition of the Spain Investors Day. And I would like, first of all, to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in this panel discussion. I'd like to put some context to the conversation with a key headline figure. And that headline figure is that between 2019 and 2025, Spain has grown an aggregate figure of 10%. And this contrasts with the aggregate growth of the Eurozone of 6.5%. Now, this is as a result of the fact that, particularly since 2023, we've been able to sustain a growth differential with the rest of the Eurozone, a situation that, according to IMF forecasts, will persist. It won't be as large as what it has been, but it will persist. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we will maintain some positive growth differential. Now, this comes with some benefits. One of the benefits is that just a few months ago, we saw how different rating agencies upgraded the Spanish debt. And this not only benefits the financing cost of the state, but also indirectly of businesses. So this is a positive element. Now, in my view, the most important thing is to ask ourselves what are the elements of transformation that are underpinning this performance, and to what degree, as Alberto also said, will they be sustainable going forwards. And I think to provide an overarching view, I will address this question from the three usual perspectives that economists tend to look at economic performance. One is the sectoral composition of that growth, two is the supply side, and three is the demand side. Now, when we look at the sectoral composition, we see some elements of diversification and competitiveness. When we look at the sectors that have contributed over that time period, the two sectors that have grown fastest have been ICT, information and communications technology, and professional activities. They've contributed together 1/3 of that total growth figure that I mentioned. If we add financial service and real estate to that, they would have accounted for 50% of that growth. So that is a positive element that we have to ensure that we continue to sustain and foster. These non-tourist services are also highly competitive internationally, as demonstrated by the fact that we have a surplus position externally, so we sell more than we buy, and that a positive external surplus has doubled since 2023. It used to represent 1% of GDP. Now it's about 2% of GDP. Now, that's the sectoral composition. When we look at the supply and the demand side, what we see is, from the supply side, 2 of the 3 drivers of supply side economic performance have contributed positively, and 1 hasn't. The one that has contributed by far the most, Alberto also mentioned, has been employment. Now, the different metrics of productivity per hour has also increased. It's only moderately increased to 2.5% during that time frame. So it's not been a very significant amount of growth. It's not been flat either. That's positive, something to build on. But what has declined has been the number of hours per person employed. And this has led to GDP per person employed being stagnant or almost even slightly negative. When we look at the demand side, all 3 drivers of demand, internal demand, have contributed: private consumption, public consumption, investment. The first 2, slightly more than a third; investment, slightly less than a third. But there is a difference here that we will talk about public investment and private investment. So we have had different drivers and some lights, but also some elements that we have to work on. So just to conclude, Jordi, so the question about sustainability is critical. We have some elements that we have to preserve around diversification, around competitiveness, but we also have elements to foster. We need a greater contribution from productivity to our growth. We have to do that through greater investment, productive investment, also residential investment, quite critical. And we have to do so also by progressively having public consumption take a moderate role in our growth, something that has already started to happen in the last few quarters.
Isabelle, your diagnosis of the Spanish economic outlook?
Yes, good morning, everybody. It's, I think as you move into the panel, it's getting harder and harder to add new elements. So I subscribe entirely to what's been said by the previous panelists. I wouldn't be shy, though, to celebrate the successes that Spain has, that the Spanish economy has registered. You've mentioned, strong outperformance in terms of GDP growth for several years in a row. You've both mentioned that fiscal sustainability is a concern. I think that is a fair point looking forward. However, Spain is one of the few countries, not just in Europe, but in the world, who's managing to reduce its debt to GDP ratio by not passing a budget, but, its debt to GDP ratio was above 100% of GDP just in 24. That's like yesterday. And that is projected to go down to 97% by 2027. The spread to Germany has come down by 40% since, the January 1st of last year. This is huge. This is helping not just the government pay its bill, it's helping the entire economy. When you look at the extraordinary shocks that have buffeted the world economy last year, Spain, again, has been an outperformer. Why? Well, number one, exposure to exports to the US, relatively small compared to the rest of Europe, just 1% of GDP. So these exports have come down, but that's been less of an impact on the economy. And then against that, do you know how Spain has changed its exports to China? China has been killing the whole world's exports, growing its export market share. Spanish exports to China up 16% last year. This is really an outperformance. And then unemployment historically low, employment historically high. So all that is really good. And I think and of course the IBEX, you mentioned it, the IBEX second best performing stock market in the world last year, 60 and some percent expressed in dollar terms. So there's a lot that's going well and a lot to build on. But I think as the previous panelists have mentioned, the question is, can that continue going forward? And if you look at the growth projections of OECD, IMF for 2027, so looking 2 years ahead, they're looking at a halving of the growth rate compared to 2024. Now, we're more optimistic than that. We're still forecasting a slowdown from 3.5-ish to closer to 2. But the question is, how do you even achieve this 2? And how do you avoid falling below that? And there the question of the drivers of this growth outperformance that was alluded to before is very important. And you know, to oversimplify, the drivers have been above historical average immigration and above historical average tourism returns. Can that continue? Big question mark. And so the question for Spain is how to mobilize different growth drivers, and the question of productivity is absolutely paramount. And I have some thoughts on how to reduce the gap, frankly, because you know, productivity per hour worked is about 1/3 lower than in the largest economies of the Eurozone, which are not even the most productive. And that gap hasn't changed in 25 years. So that's the question, is how to close this gap and sustain the growth outperformance, which is also essential to keep public finances on a sustainable trajectory going forward.
Before talking a bit more about productivity, let me ask Antonio, from CECA perspective, are you worried about the sustainability of this growth, or what is your assessment of the current economic situation in Spain?
Okay, buenos días, good morning everybody, and first of all, thank you very much to the Spain Investors Day initiative for this kind invitation to participate in this panel with Alberto, Ana, and Isabelle. Well, as a general overview, it seems that the Spanish economy will grow in 2026 at a relatively solid rate, also with a gradual moderation, but by the way, it is consistent with the maturity of the cycle. According to FUNCA's panel forecast, average GDP in 2026 in Spain stands at 2.1%, but with an upward trend if we observe the last rounds of the panel. So I'm in the hardest position now in this table, but I agree with the analysis, with your diagnosis, with the weaknesses and the strengths that you have raised. Let me just add 2 or 3 more remarks to this discussion. First of all, I think that despite the complexity of the international context, especially due to the uncertainty in the commercial landscape, it is important to highlight the strong performance of non-touristic service export. This includes financial services, communications, consultancy. This, in my opinion, reflects the competitiveness of the Spanish economy in strategic services beyond tourism. That would be the first remark. The second remark that I think we should highlight is the solid financial position of the private sector. After more than a decade of deleveraging, the private debt stands at its lowest level in 25 years, below the European average and below the pre-crisis financial crisis in 2008. Taking as a reference the ratio debt to GDP, households remain at around 50%, corporates at 60%. In my opinion, this is a very important question, because the reduction of the private debt increases the resilience of the Spanish economy against external financial shocks. And a third remark is the healthy position of the financial sector in terms of proficiency, profitability, I mean, solvency, efficiency, in terms of its capacity to continue financing the real economy and to do so in very competitive terms. The interest rates applied by financial institutions in Spain are below the European average, and I hope to have the opportunity to dive into this issue later.
Yeah. As we have heard, Spain has a lot of challenges. Every country has their own challenges, but talking about Spain, we have seen productivity, fiscal sustainability. Which reforms, it's a general question, which reforms do you think are the most important to face these challenges?
So as we have mentioned, I think all of us, productivity should be our most important focus. Without productivity, you cannot sustain higher salaries, you cannot pay pensions, you cannot grow, you cannot converge to the most prosperous countries in Europe or in the OECD. So we should focus our economic policy in increasing productivity and doing our best to fill that gap, that historic gap in productivity within Spain and the most advanced countries in Europe and the OECD. So, first of all, the first question is, are we investing enough? Is our investment good enough to increase the productivity of the country? Well, compared to other European countries, compared to the most dynamic Asian countries, our investment is lower. And part of it is because taxes are higher for investments than in other parts of the European Union and in other parts of the OECD. So we should look at taxes as one of the best ways to attract investment and to foster investment in Spain. But if you increase the public expenditure to GDP in nearly 5 points in the last 7 years, it's very difficult to reduce taxes. So first thing we have to do is to increase expenditure less than the economy to reduce the weight of public expenditure in GDP, to give room to reduce taxes, to foster investment, to attract talent, to attract technology. We also have to give back part of the erosion of income that middle-income families are having in Spain through the increase in the income tax through inflation. Because that gives a very wrong signal to the population that investment in education, investment in experience will pay off. What we are telling our population is that don't worry if you don't make an effort, don't worry if you don't invest in your human capital, because you're gonna be in a huge mass of low-income employees that are receiving an ever-growing minimum salary. But if you invest in experience and if you invest in being a more productive worker, what you're going to get is higher taxes. So we have to reverse that. We have to reverse the incentives for investment and for human capital through the tax system. And to do that, we have to create enough room in the public expenditure, making it grow at a lower rate than the economy and not the other way around. That is what we have experienced in the last 7 years. Second thing, we have an energy problem. The planning of the energy policy that has been developed by this government makes the impossible task to decarbonize this economy and closing nuclear plants at the same time. No country has done that. No country is going to do that. So we have to reverse that. But the second problem we have in energy, and it's urgent to solve it, is access to the grid is impossible. We have hundreds of projects in the generation area and in the demand side that are stopped because there is no access to the grid. That's something that has to be solved immediately. The third thing we have to look at is regulation. It's a European problem, but in Spain, where we are the kings of gold plating, and the problem is even harder because the government, what has done is instead of regulating to solve problems, they are regulating in order to keep an impossible coalition at the parliament together, and in order to bring ideology to the regulation. That has created a humongous amount of rules that especially small and medium-sized companies are impossible to digest. It's impossible for them to digest. So taxes, energy, regulation, education. We are falling behind. We are spending more and more on education, and we are falling behind. Our education system in all levels is not adapting to the new world, to the skills that are required for our people in the new economy. And the fifth area we have to work very hard is technology, where there is a huge transformation all around. Artificial intelligence is going to change everything. And if you look at what we are doing in the country, we are just doing nothing. We are just leaving the private sector to have the initiative to deal with the challenges and also to incorporate these new technologies into their productive system, but the government is not doing nothing, is doing nothing and is not profiting from the new world that is opening to be more efficient. A good example is the problem of homes, the problem of real estate in Spain. There is no supply of homes for the Spaniards because there is no place to build the houses. And it's not because we don't have room. There's a lot of room. What we don't have is areas where we can build because the permits are not there. And it takes more than a decade to approve the permits to build homes in Spain. This is absolutely unacceptable. So we have to change the rules, and we have also to incorporate new technologies in order to make faster the whole process of administrative decision.
And Isabelle, Antonio, in your opinion, which are the most important reforms that Spain needs?
I would like to highlight, it's already been pointed out that although we've had the performance that we've described earlier, we still sustain a significant GDP per capita gap with the Eurozone, for example. So, of course, we have things to work on. And I would like to prioritize three things. One is investment, two is innovation, and three is fostering our young people's human capital, all human capital, but I would like to place a specific emphasis on our young people's human capital. Now, with regards to the first one, I mentioned earlier that investment has contributed to our growth, a little bit less than a third of total internal demand. However, when we zoom into that, what we see is that what has been very dynamic has been public investment, but business investment has been much more muted. So what we absolutely have to do going forward is to foster business investment. Business investment is a majority of total investment in an economy, so it's of critical importance that it recovers its dynamism. The second element is innovation, and I would like to address this point by looking at international benchmarks. Now, the World Intellectual Property Organization, for example, conducts an annual survey of where different countries are at with innovation. And what it says for the Spanish economy is that Spain performs in line with its level of economic development. However, when we look at the countries that are at the top of the rankings, they outperform their level of economic development. So what it means is that we're doing okay, but we're not yet outperforming, and we need to put focus and emphasis on outperforming. Of course, there are great examples of large corporates and a promising ecosystem of startups that are innovative, but when we look across the board of our economic and business fiber, we're not yet sufficiently innovative. What do businesses tell us that we have to do? We have to ensure that there is predictability in the policy environment. Investors make investments on the basis of certain expectations about policy, so it's of critical importance that we can support that predictability. Secondly, proportionate and harmonized regulation. Businesses understand that regulation has got a role to play, but it's of critical importance as well that we introduce them on the basis of cost-benefit analysis and that it's as harmonized as possible. So, for example, the Regime 20 initiative is a great initiative that would facilitate businesses in Spain scaling up across the whole of our territory. And collaboration to foster innovation, collaboration within sectors, across sectors, and between people and technology. And the third point that is of critical importance is fostering our young people's human capital. They are the ones that will deliver over the medium term and the long term those increases in productivity that we need. Now, there is a couple of data points let me introduce, which I think are really important because they very much highlight what it is that we need to do. The Spanish Public Employment Service tells us that of all the vacancies in the country, 60% do not get filled because the candidates did not have the skills or the experience for the jobs that they were applying for. Now, Eurostat tells us that with regards to the education level of our population, we have a higher proportion than the European average in tertiary education. However, we have also a high proportion that are overqualified. So in fact, they're doing jobs that are lower skilled than the skills that they have. And they also tell us that we have a deficit of students in STEM careers. So it's clear just from this data what it is that we have to do. We have to provide incentives for our young people to take STEM careers and for them to be more entrepreneurial, to support innovation. We have to be more agile in matching the supply of education to the needs of the market and orientate better our people towards those opportunities. And finally, I would like to briefly touch on mobility. It's of critical importance that our young people can go to the places, typically cities, where the job opportunities are, and for that, access to housing is critical. We have a deficit of supply. Over the last 10 years, supply has dropped by 70%, so we absolutely have to foster supply. Over the medium, longer term, Alberto mentioned, we need to modernize our construction through industrialized construction. This will help us be more competitive in cost and also more agile. But in the short term, what we have to do is to be more flexible with regards to the uses of the land that we have, and also support the sector in mitigating some of the cost pressures that affect it and that in some ways constrain the agility with which they can increase the supply that is required.
Isabelle, you mentioned before the productivity. What can Spain do to be more productive?
Yeah, so, I mean, productivity, the number one recipe is to boost it, is investment. You need to increase the capital stock per worker, and in Spain that hasn't happened in the last 10 years. If anything, in the last 5, there's been an erosion of that capital stock per worker. So that needs to be turned around, and the path to that is more investment. But having said that, on productivity specifically, there's an important structural dimension to this gap that Spain faces. Spain has world-class companies. In its largest companies, they're at the same productivity level as their peers in Europe and globally. What is really penalizing Spain is the fact that you don't have a lot of these world-class companies. And in fact, the vast majority of jobs and GDP creation is in very, very small companies. And these very small companies, they don't have the profitability to invest, to innovate, to do R&D spending. R&D spending in Spain, on the whole, is something like a third lower than in the rest of the Eurozone. It's not because of public R&D. Public R&D is at the same level as everywhere else. It's business R&D. Again, when you're a small company, you don't have the profitability to invest in R&D. And so this question of scale of businesses is critical. Spain has a lot of regulation and tax laws that reward small size. Now, you know, what you see in the most dynamic economies is you have allowances, you know, that encourage young companies. But if a young company, you know, stays small, doesn't grow, there is no public policy rationale for continuing to support it. So there's a question of transforming all these incentives from favoring small size to favoring dynamism and business creation, business growth. So that's one point I would make. Then shifting to the labor market, that all the points that Anna made are absolutely critical. And they're critical, why? Because Spain has one of the lowest employment rates in Europe, meaning, well, a lot of people are not employed. That's true of seniors, that's true of young people, a lot of highly educated young people, but also one of the highest rates in Europe of young people leaving the school system without any qualification. That's a real problem in today's world. And this low employment ratio not only reduces GDP, but reduces the resources that go into the budget. And to go back to the fiscal sustainability issue, in addition to the need to create space to lower taxes that Juan was alluding to, Spain has ahead of it the largest aging shock in Europe. In fact, the second largest in OECD, second only to Korea. What does this mean? It means that the dependency ratio is set to increase by 40 percentage points in the next 20 years. Now, that's well beyond the horizon of any politician. But what this means is that if you look at both the combination of health and pension spending, you're going to have an increase of over 8% of GDP in public spending over that time period. So you need to create additional resources for this, and the best, least painful way of doing this is by increasing the number of, the ratio of the population that is employed. The last thing I would say, and it's more an element of context, Spain, in a way, has benefited in recent years from the fact that the core economies of Europe, and especially Germany, were not growing. Germany didn't grow between 2020 and 2024. 2025, small growth rate, maybe around 0.3%. We expect that to shift to a much higher growth regime this year and in the future at around 1.4%. So Germany, which wasn't driving investment from anywhere in recent years, is going to be a magnet for that. So Spain is going to have to work harder to attract investment and to close the productivity gap with core Europe. So that's an important element of context as well.
Antonio, do you have a similar recipe, or do you have new approaches to these challenges?
I agree, of course, with you all, but let me focus, if I may, in the financial sector activity. Jordi, you mentioned in your introductory remarks the importance of the, let's say, the context, international context, the complexity of this context as a threat for the Spanish economy. I agree with that. The multilateralism is being questioned. Other jurisdictions, like the US, are taking a very pragmatic approach to the economic phenomena, and I think that from Europe we have to react, we have to take action. From the perspective of financial services, I think we have to take at least 3 actions. First of all is regulatory relief. Regulatory relief. Since the financial crisis, the regulatory framework in Europe has grown exponentially. And this is the case, of course, of the banking activity, but I'm sure it's also the case of many other industries and activities. The operational burden created by this regulatory framework is increasing the cost of compliance and, by extension, the cost of credit, and is detracting resources from the intermediation business. So it is essential to take action to propose initiatives in order to simplify, and this is the magic word now, simplification, to simplify the regulatory and the supervisory framework for European banking institutions. Both the Letta and Draghi reports agree on the idea that this regulatory framework has become a problem because it affects the competitiveness of the European economy. And fortunately, European institutions, especially the European Commission, is proposing initiatives in order to simplify this regulatory framework, the so-called omnibus packages. But in my opinion, we need more ambition in this simplification agenda, because the simplification is not an objective itself. The simplification is a tool in order to improve the competitiveness of the European economy. That's the final objective. And that's the reason why we need more ambition in this project. This means that it's not only a question to simplify. We also need to reconsider, for example, the legislative process in Europe in order to reduce the rhythm of legislative production. We also need to open a discussion, for example, on the legal mandate of supervisory and regulatory agencies. In my opinion, together with the main objective, the main legal mandate to preserve the financial stability, we should include a second objective for the BCE, for the European Banking Authority, which is the improvement, the preservation of the European and the banking system. Second action, we need more Europe. More Europe. And His Majesty the King and the Vice President of the ECB this morning in the opening remarks, they refer to this question. More Europe is not an option, it's the only way forward. And what does this mean in the financial sector? This means two things. First of all, we need to complete the banking union, the three pillars, solvency, resolution, and especially the protection scheme, the deposit protection scheme, which is totally uncompleted. And secondly, initiatives like the savings union, savings and investment union, and the capital markets union must be at the top of the priorities in the legislative agenda at the European Union level. And the third action, Alberto mentioned the taxation issue. Let me refer to the specific taxes for specific sectors, like the Spanish banking tax. These taxes are a really bad idea. They affect competitiveness, increase uncertainty for strategic sectors, and they are unacceptable in the context of a harmonized banking union. So in my opinion, in the global context of reconsideration of taxation, these taxes should be eliminated.
We will have 5 more minutes. So, Antonio, briefly, talking about banking situation. Spanish banks are now in a good position to contribute better than a few years ago to the Spanish economy, to the growth of the Spanish economy?
Absolutely, absolutely. From a strictly financial point of view, according to the latest data from the ECB, from the dashboard, ratios in Spanish deposit institutions in terms of profitability, efficiency, and liquidity are much better than those of our European peers. The non-performing loans ratio is in historic low levels in a decade, and is converging with the average of the Eurozone. In terms of solvency, Spanish deposit institutions have increased the common equity tier 1 ratio to a very solid 13.3%. But more interestingly, according to the stress test driven by the European Banking Authority last year, and the results were published in August, the Spanish banking system shows a capacity to preserve high solvency ratios in adverse scenario context. And from a social, and I will finish here, from a social perspective, the Spanish institutions have increased their contribution to social and economic development of Spanish communities. In particular, institution members of CECA have allocated more than 900 million euros to the Obra Social.
Very briefly, from what extent the political situation without a budget approved by the Congress and with some regional elections this year could affect the economic outlook for Spain? Isabelle?
Well, yes, it does, because it's not a matter of how much only a matter of how much we are spending or we are not. We have to take into account that the budget of the central government is the basis of the structure, of the financial structure of the whole public system of public administrations. So, the central government budget determines, for example, how much the other administrations can spend, how many people can they hire, what are the salaries to be paid. So what we have is we are a federal country where regional governments are blind. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to draft their own budgets because we don't have the budget of the central government. And it's not that we don't have it for 1 year. We don't have it in the last 3 years, which is unconstitutional, but it's not only unconstitutional, it's also dysfunctional. The second problem we have is that we cannot adapt the budget to the circumstances that we have in the economy right now. If we got to invest or put more resources on a certain policy, we cannot do it right now. So it's not only the volume, it's not only the taxes, it's also the misallocation of resources as a consequence of not having a budget in the economy. Does it have an immediate impact? No, but it has a continuous exercise of not having this, the central government budgets for many years, at the end, has negative consequences on the population.
Are you agree?
Let me quickly complement that, because I think we have to take the debate also to the medium term. And the medium-term situation, I think, will make it very clear for everyone how, as a society, we have to address this matter. Today, we have 3 people in working age per person in retired age. In 15 years, we will have 2 people in working age per person in retired age. And in 25 years, we will have 1.5 people in working age per person in retired age. So we... Alberto said, do we have an immediate problem? No, but we have a medium-term challenge, and it's necessary that collectively we find the solutions that will make this sustainable.
Something to add, Isabelle?
Yeah, just maybe I think that Spain maybe has a narrative problem. I mean, it's been an outperformer, and as I said earlier, to most people who don't know the details, they think, well, it's a tourism story. And actually, there's a lot more to the Spanish economy. The best driver of the IBEX outperformance has been a defense company. And so I think, you know, I was thinking coming here, well, what has changed since a year ago? And actually not that much has changed in Spain, but the world has changed and Europe has changed. And there is now a context where Europe is in a process of accelerated transformation driven by the defense imperative. I think to the extent that Spain can plug itself to the broader European story, and that's the more Europe dimension that you were alluding to as well, I think that can really be to the benefit of its overall attractiveness, and then driving resource allocation to the places that will really yield the maximum returns. I think that's key.
We've run out of time, so thank you, all of you, for your contributions. And let's continue with the Spain Investors Day.